Okay, it is 1 o'clock and the proceedings of this meeting will be recorded and made available on the internet. If we can ask the clerk to conduct the roll, please.
Mayor Clarkson, are you present?
I am.
Deputy Mayor Windover?
Present.
Councillor Armstrong?
Present.
Councillor Franzen?
Present.
Councillor Lambshead?
Present.
For staff, we have Donna Taggart, CIO Treasurer.
Present.
Steve Brockbeck, Director of Emergency Services.
Present.
Del Arbor, Planner.
Present.
Ann Ruth, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
Lynn Holtz, Economic Development Officer.
Present.
And Jesse Clark, Director of Corporate Services. Clerk is present.
Okay, we're going to do a land acknowledgement and moment of reflection. This is new to us and probably very timely in that what has turned up to be really problematic is to not only the residential schools, but the problems that have been left behind due to missing children and whatever. So now we will be opening our meetings with this. So we respectfully acknowledge the Trent Lakes and Peterborough County are located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nation, which include Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Scugog Island First Nations. Trent Lakes respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. We will now take a moment to reflect on these principles and our duties and responsibility as members of Council. Thank you. I'm going to remind Council members of their obligation to declare any pecuniary interests that they may have. And seeing no hands, I'm going to declare an interest in short-term rentals. I was not here at the last meeting, so I'm going to recuse myself from any discussions concerning short-term rentals. Now, if we could get a motion to approve the agenda. Deputy Mayor Windover, Councillor Franzen, all in favor. That motion is carried. We need to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of September 7th and the statutory public meeting of September the 7th. Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor, and that motion is carried. Committees and boards, Economic Development Advisory Committee, September the 13th. Parks, Recreation and Cultural Advisory Committees for September the 9th. If we could have a motion, please. Councillor Franzen, Councillor Armstrong, all in favor. The motion is carried. Liaison reports for council boards and committees. Do we have any for either the library, EDAC, PRCAC, PSB, or the library board? And I hope everybody knows what these little things mean. Any, yes?
Just a comment about the PRCAC. I think all the committee members that have worked so hard on that report, we're very pleased that council supported that. And great thank you to everyone.
Okay, statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act. We need a motion to suspend regular meeting and a seconder. Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Franzen, all in favor. The motion is carried. Now, the first one, we're going to ask Adele to introduce this file.
Through you, Mayor Clarkson. I just need a moment to grab a file.
Yep. It's the file number 21-06 for Convery.
Thank you for your patience. Through you, Mayor Clarkson. Today we have a public meeting for today's application containing the prescribed information that was circulated to all landowners within 120-meter radius of the subject lands at least 20 days prior to this meeting. The notice was also mailed to all prescribed agencies, public bodies, and persons in accordance with the recommendations. Today's public meeting is held under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider an amendment to the Municipality Zoning Bylaw B 2014-070. Anybody wanting to be notified of any decision from today's public meetings must send in a written request to myself or the clerk, and the notice of passing will be mailed to them, setting out the method and manner in which appeals may be made to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Please note, if a person does not send a written comment prior to the passing of the bylaw or make an oral submission at today's public meeting, that person may not be entitled to appeal the decision. Today's first public meeting is in reference to file number 2106 to consider a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by agent Lori Young of JL Young Design for property owners Steve and Kathy Convery for the property municipally known as 435 Beaver Lake Road on Catchacoma Lake. I just would like to bring to your attention on the external planning consultant's report that is before council at today's public meeting. The lake was incorrectly identified as Mississauga Lake, and correctly it should be Catchacoma. The subject lands are approximately 1 acre in size with a shoreline frontage of approximately 40 meters. The property is currently zoned shoreline residential. The applicant is proposing to construct a single-story addition of 52.4 square meters or 564 square feet onto the existing 1.5-story dwelling. In addition, the applicant is also proposing a deck and a deck addition with a floor area of approximately 33.4 square meters or 424 square feet, with part of the deck intended to be covered. The applicant would require the following relief from the zoning bylaw: a reduction to the minimum water yard setback from 30 meters to 15.8 meters or 52 feet for the proposed addition to the dwelling. There is a planning report on the agenda from the municipality's planning consultant, Chris Jones, in support of the zoning bylaw amendment being requested. He states the application is generally consistent with the provincial policy statement and growth plan and the municipality's official plan. The report further identifies that the existing dwelling is located in the water yard setback, with the proposed addition resulting in more than a 50% increase to the ground floor area while maintaining the existing water yard setback, which is approximately 15.8 meters or 52 feet for the dwelling and 12.5 meters or 41 feet for the deck. The municipality has received correspondence from Peterborough Public Health stating they have no objection to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Agent Lori Young and owners Steve and Kathy Convery are available to answer any questions. Further, if any members of the public did not register with the clerk indicating their intent to make an oral submission but would like to at this time, please use the raise a hand feature so we are able to promote you in order for you to make an oral submission. And thank you. That ends the presentation on this first zoning bylaw amendment.
Okay, so Adele, you've asked if there's any members of the public available. Do you know if there's any on there? If not, yes.
We have the agent Lori Young as well as the owner Kathy Convery on the line.
Okay. Would either of you like to decide who's going to speak first and give us your comments, please?
Yes, it's Lori Young, through you, Chair. And I just want to add that it was a challenging addition to work with because we were hemmed in by a hydro line that was there. The clients went to a lot of trouble to see if that line could be moved so that we could respect the water yard setback a little further, but it wasn't to be. So we worked actually for probably about 8 months with staff and Chris Jones to come up with this plan, and we ask that you consider it.
Okay, thank you. And the second speaker there, please. The second speaker. Jesse, do you see a second speaker?
Kathy's on the line, but she is self-muted.
I believe through you, Chair, as the agent, I was just going to speak, but they are available if there are any questions I can answer.
Okay, then I think I'm going to ask for comments from council. They can ask questions and maybe we can get a dialogue there to make sure that everybody understands. Anybody? Terry?
Yeah, I just have a comment. I think it's a reasonable request for relief because of the lot and the restraints that are on there. So.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for that.
I'll agree with Terry. Yeah.
All right, so then we will move on to file number 2112 for Municipality.
Through you, Mayor Clarkson, this is our second public meeting. As you mentioned, it's for file number 21-12 to consider a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by agent Tom DeBoer of TD Consulting, Inc. for property owner Rick Valicenti for a vacant shoreline lot located on a fire access road on Loon Lake. The subject lands have a shoreline frontage of approximately 42 meters or 139 feet and a lot area of approximately 0.8 of an acre. Although a substantial portion of the applicant's lot is underwater at any given time, the dry developable area of the property may be half of the total lot area. The lot is constrained by the wetland feature on the south side of the property. The property is currently zoned shoreline residential private access. The applicant wishes to construct a new 2,000 square foot dwelling. In order to construct the proposed dwelling, the applicant would be required to have the following relief from the zoning bylaw: a reduction to the minimum water yard setback from 30 meters to 7.9 meters or 26 feet for the proposed dwelling, and a reduction to the wetland setback from 30 meters to 7.9 meters. The applicant has submitted an environmental impact study by Oak Ridge Environmental Limited in support of the application. There is a planning report on the agenda from the municipality's planning consultant, Chris Jones. His report identifies that the applicant's site plan suggests the proposed dwelling would be compliant with the minimum setback required from a private road and the minimum exterior side yard setback from the municipality's unopened road allowance. However, Chris Jones has noted that the filter bed for the proposed septic system would be located in the required setback from a private road. He goes on to identify that the application is generally consistent with provincial policy statement and growth plan and conforms to the municipality's official plan. Kawartha Conservation has provided comments that they are satisfied with the applicant's EIS, which has addressed all concerns related to potential impacts to natural features, and the proposed development should adhere to the report recommendations that address mitigation measures. The municipality has received correspondence from Peterborough Public Health stating that they have no objection to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. As well, land owners that are adjacent to this property, Sharon and Christine Brookman, advise they have no objections. Agent Tom DeBoer is available to answer any questions should council or the public have any. Further, if any members of the public did not register with the clerk indicating their intent to make an oral submission but would like to do so at this time, please use the raise a hand feature so we are able to promote you in order for you to make an oral submission. And thank you.
Okay, Jesse, do you see anybody there who would like to speak?
We have Tom DeBoer, the agent, and Valicenti, the owner, available.
Okay, Tom, would you like to proceed?
Thank you very much, Mayor and committee. This property, as you can appreciate, is very challenging, and I think we've done the best to minimize the environmental impacts while still allowing the owner to maximize its benefits. I do agree with Adele and the location of the septic system being within the setback of the fire access road. However, there's nobody beyond this property that would utilize that access other than small vehicular access for public access just to utilize the lake. That being said, we've also placed the septic system in that general location in concert with Peterborough Health, as that was the most appropriate and the best distance from the water body for a septic system in this location. And aside from that, I think the balance of it is in keeping with what we need to do. I understand that today that the application is being deferred, and I'm assuming it's strictly so that we can work with the municipality to enter into a site plan agreement to capture all of these unique features to ensure that they're protected going forward. And we don't have any objection to that. And if there's anything beyond that, questions, concerns, as this is a unique project, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, and the second commenter there, please. Hello, hello. Okay, while we're tuning in there, have we got any questions or comments from council? Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Mayor Clarkson, and through you. I am concerned anytime I see an exception to the 30-meter setback to a water body, particularly for a new dwelling where there's no previous footprint. I simply want to be assured that we are not jeopardizing the health or the quality of that lake. This one, the request is to be 26 feet back from Loon Lake, which is actually in the riparian zone of 30 meters, where we would expect to have a naturalized shoreline to protect the ongoing health of the water. So I'm not opposed to it, but I would just like to hear again assurances that this proximity to the lake doesn't pose any environmental issues now or in the future.
It's Tom DeBoer again with TD Consulting, if I may, through you, Mayor. We have done a very extensive report regarding the environmental features on the property. We have worked closely with the Conservation Authority to sort of do our best to maintain that riparian vegetation, as well as we're going to be put conditions forward to provide additional vegetation to protect. The proposed dwelling, which is a little bit unique, will not have a full foundation, and it's going to have a very minimal impact on the environment as itself, as it will be on piers as opposed to a full foundation. So there's many different items that we've sort of contemplated, understanding the close proximity to the lake and the features that hopefully through the agency review, specifically Kawartha Conservation, have recognized that we've done just about everything, and in our opinion, everything that we could do to either rectify or clarify and or amplify additional protection mechanisms through the process.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Lamshead, please.
Yes, and I'm sure you can answer this too. I'm sure that the owners are quite willing to adhere to any of the restrictions and conditions in the environmental impact study, so we're protecting as much as we can. And I'm concerned about the septic tank and bed being out near the road, because people used to turn around there. I'm quite familiar with that piece of property my entire life, so I think some marking or some barrier at the end of that by the side of the road would be necessary.
And I'm not going to disagree with you, Mr. Lamshead, there. And I think one of the most appropriate things to do is we can just put some small granite boulders or something of that nature along the mutual property line or on the edge of the septic bed, just to have a deterrent from any vehicles traversing primarily over the private property, but also just to sort of ensure that septic is protected.
Thank you.
And just to relate to the previous question was, yes, they're aware of all of the conditions and concerns and are more than happy to administer. They are a transient visitor of the core or of the Trent Lakes area, and they want this as sort of a vacation dwelling in serenity, and not to disturb nature, but to live as part of nature.
And through you, Mayor Clarkson, if I can add that planning staff, when we look at a vacant piece of property along a shoreline of a lake or a river in the municipality, we always ask for an environmental impact study to be done to identify the best location for any proposed dwelling on that piece of property. And given the constraints of this property, we also ask that any EIS that's been prepared for a project such as this is reviewed by either a consultant, a peer review that's done, and in this case it was done by Kawartha Conservation. So we're quite happy that all the protection will be put in place for this piece of property, and hence that's why we asked for a site plan development agreement to be registered on title in perpetuity with the property for any future owners.
Good.
Does that answer any of your questions, Carol?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so if we're finished, then we'll move on, please.
I have one question.
Yes, Peter.
Through you, Mayor. What is the elevation of the building? You stated that it was going to be on piers. How much above the ground will the main dwelling be?
Currently, as you can appreciate, the final house drawings are not complete, but I'm going to estimate at least 1 foot clearance between the building and the ground, which will allow, even in the worst extreme case, if there was a flood, the house and the dwelling and the belongings within that dwelling would still be protected, and the owners are aware that the likelihood is not likely, but if it ever did, what it also allows is passage of air and groundwater and everything else to continue the way it naturally would have, with as little disturbance as possible with putting the structure in that place.
Okay, Peter?
Thank you.
You're all right. Okay, if we can get a motion to reconvene the regular meeting, please. Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor? Thank you, that motion is carried. Now, do we have business arising from statutory public meeting? Adele, would you like to speak to the 2106, please?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson. Further to a public meeting held today for file number 21-06. At this time, the external planning consultant, Chris Jones, is recommending that the report be received, and further that the zoning bylaw amendment on today's agenda be considered for approval by council. And I would just like to note that the bylaw schedule that's attached to the actual bylaw identifies the lake incorrectly, and we will make that correction to Catchacoma Lake.
Okay, thank you. Can we have a motion, please? Deputy Mayor Windover, Councillor Franzen, all in favor. That motion is carried. Now, Adele, you're on again. 2112, please.
Through you, Mayor Clarkson. Further to the public meeting that was held for file number 21-12. At this time, staff are recommending that council receive the report and direct staff to prepare an amending bylaw and site plan development agreement to be considered by council at a future meeting.
Thank you. Could we have a motion, please? Councillor Lambshead,
Motion.
and second by
Motion to
Councillor
approve.
Armstrong. All in favor? The motion is carried. Presentations. Jean Chartier, Vice President for Paragon Transportation Solutions Limited. Diane Adley, Senior Environmental Planner. Static Consultation. Peter Nielsen, Manager of Capital Projects from Peterborough County. And it's the County of Peterborough ORV study. We will now have a presentation from Jean Charter, Vice President, Paragon Transportation Solutions Limited, Diane Adley, Senior Environmental Planner, Stan Tech Consulting, Peter Nielsen, Manager, Capital Projects, Peterborough County, regarding the County of Peterborough ORV study. Please unmute your audio and/or share your camera and make your presentation. You will have 20 minutes, and I will ask council that all questions are saved till the end of the presentation.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm Jean Chartier with Paradigm Transportation Solutions Limited. Pleased to be making the presentation on behalf of our study team today. As mentioned, Peter Nielsen is here from the county's Planning and Public Works Department, as well as my colleague Diana Adley from Stantec. If there are any questions that I do need to seek their their assistance with. Next slide, please. So today's presentation is to update the Municipalities Council on progress that has been achieved to date with the county's off-road vehicle use on county roads study. We've been at this for a little while, so we thought it was appropriate to be updating the lower tier municipal councils on the project status and advising you of where things are at. I also thought we would take the opportunity to summarize the county's decision-making process for this study, just so that you have an appreciation of how the county is approaching this. Talk a little bit about the potential approaches that we're considering to recommend to County Council for addressing ORV use on county roads. And finally, just run over with you the next steps in our process, including what we're doing currently in terms of engagement. So next slide, please. So before I begin, I thought it would probably be appropriate just to briefly review the regulatory framework around the use of off-road vehicles in Ontario, and specifically within Peterborough County and the lower tier municipalities. So the Highway Traffic Act is the governing statute in Ontario regulating the use of off-road vehicles on public roads. There's a specific regulation under the Act that deals with the operation of off-road vehicles on highways. And it works in conjunction with a broader piece of legislation called the Off-Road Vehicles Act, which sets out all of the terms and conditions around the use of off-road vehicles in the province, whether that be on public or private property. And that specifies things like safety regulations and vehicle dimensions, things of that nature that are sort of germane to operating off-road vehicles or allowing their operation in the province. At the beginning of the year, though, the regulations were changed in terms of the use of off-road vehicles in the province on public roads. And as of that date, the regulation 31603 was changed to make it permissive that off-road vehicles be allowed on all lower tier municipal roads within a select group of municipalities, to which Trent Lakes was one of those municipalities that was specifically identified. So now at this time, if we'll talk a little bit about sort of the current status, but any lower tier municipality that's in this category doesn't have to pass a bylaw to allow off-road vehicle use on their public roads. They're permitted as of right, and they can, though, pass bylaws that either restrict or prohibit their access to certain roads. The important thing to note, though, is that this change in regulation didn't affect the county's roads. The county wasn't one of the identified municipalities. So the rules that were in effect prior to the beginning of this year, which stated that a municipality would only allow off-road vehicle use on its roadways by bylaw, is still in effect for the county. So the purpose of what we're doing is determining whether the county should be changing its bylaw to allow off-road vehicle use in additional locations to where they are currently permitted today. So next slide, please. So in terms of the off-road vehicle bylaws in the county, what we've tried to do is just sort of summarize the current status of the various municipalities. And as you can see, it somewhat varies. So in Cavan Monaghan, they passed a bylaw earlier this year that prohibits off-road vehicle use on all of its roadways. The Township of Douro-Dummer permits off-road vehicles on select roadways within the municipality. So there's two sections. Yourselves, North Kawartha and Havelock, Belmont, Methuen, have bylaws that permit off-road vehicle use on any of your roadways. And then the county has a bylaw that speaks to 11 road sections in Havelock where off-road vehicle use is permitted on county roads. The three remaining municipalities, so Selwyn, OSM, and Asphodel Norwood, currently don't have bylaws. So by default, under the regulation, they are permitted, but they're interested in hearing the outcome of this study that the county is doing to help guide them in terms of their next steps. Next slide, please. So to date, we've done a number of outreach initiatives to try to engage the county and its residents, as well as stakeholders and interested parties who have an interest in the topic of ORV use on county roads. So we got underway about a year ago with the notice of commencement, and we conducted an initial survey online to identify specific issues and locations with regards to the use of off-road vehicles. We then did a more detailed survey last fall, earlier this year, to get a sense as to where the existing desirable routes might be for off-road vehicle use. Counties, councils, Transportation Master Plan Steering Committee had a meeting where they dedicated the entire session to hearing from deputations regarding the use of off-road vehicles. So there were parties that were in favor, parties that weren't as favorable to the use of ORVs on public roads. So it provided a good opportunity for the steering committee to hear about the variety of issues from the stakeholders. We've held meetings with lower tier municipal staff, as well as the Hiawatha and Curve Lake First Nations to get their input into it as well. Next slide, please. So I've summarized here on this slide the feedback that we've heard to date, and I'm not going to go through all of the various points, but suffice to say it is an issue that people have a variety of different opinions on. In some cases, they're polar opposites, but it does engender a lot of comment when we do have raised the issue of ORV use on roadways. So there are a number of interested parties who think that there are a lot of benefits towards allowing ORV use on county roads, and there are people that are concerned. So recognizing that there are a variety of different interests, we thought it was important to come up with a decision-making process, which you can see on the next slide, please. And this was presented to County Council at the beginning of June and got their authorization to proceed forward on the basis of this decision-making process. We're currently in stage 4 of the 6 stages. I'll talk a little bit about the potential approaches that we've identified through stage 2 in just a second. But where we're at today is we're in the process of gathering feedback from all of the lower tier municipalities in the county. As mentioned, we've reached out to the First Nations communities as well as the public through a public information center that's online currently, running through till early October. And what we're trying to do is get feedback from a variety of different parties about the potential approaches and some implementation considerations. Once we get that feedback, then our expectation is to be presenting a recommended strategy to the Transportation Master Plan Steering Committee and then through the Peterborough County Council to get a recommended or approved approach for moving forward with ORV use on county roads. And it's going to entail, whatever strategy is selected, there will be an education and information component to it, because there are sort of differing levels of understanding of the use of ORVs and the appropriate use of them on county roadways. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we've come up with some different approaches for dealing with the issue of off-road vehicle use on county roads. And we've kind of captured them into sort of 3 different options or alternatives that we're calling them. On the one side, there's the option that the county would throw open the use of all roads under their jurisdiction for ORVs. There's sort of the other side of that one is where the county would continue and basically would continue with their existing approach of not allowing ORV use on all county roads. And then there's what we're calling alternative 2, which is somewhere in the middle, where the county would designate specific roadways within its jurisdiction where ORV use would be allowed. And at this current time, we're still in the process of gathering feedback from a variety of different stakeholders, including yourselves and the other lower tier municipal councils, about some of the thoughts around these different approaches. We're going to be providing a recommendation to the Transportation Master Plan Steering Committee, as I mentioned. And in that assessment, we'll be looking at things like the legislative and regulatory framework in terms of how it fits with that. What are the potential benefits, the potential disbenefits, and looking at other factors such as enforcement, impacts to property and infrastructure when we come back with our recommendation to the Transportation Master Plan Steering Committee. Next slide, please. So recognizing that alternative 1 and alternative 3, I would suggest are pretty self-explanatory. There's not a lot of sort of gray area. Either it's all or nothing in those 2 alternatives. Alternative 2, though, does require a little bit more technical evaluation to look at where which county roads would be appropriate for use for ORVs. So in the process of coming up with the network, we applied a 5-step evaluation process, which I've summarized here on this slide, where we've come up with a series of evaluation criteria, which are primarily quantitative in nature, so things like speed limits, shoulders availability, roadway width, things of that nature that can be measured and evaluated from road section to road section. We've taken that information, combined it with geographical information system data to come up with a database that has enabled us to score all of the road segments as to their suitability for off-road vehicle use. Factored in some qualitative criteria, such as proximity to different types of land uses, or its ability to connect together links in the network. And we've come up with a conceptual network plan. Next slide, please, which basically looks somewhat like this. And I would caution that this is really this is currently a concept plan. There hasn't been a decision made to go with alternative 2. That still is something that needs to be recommended and considered by the Transportation Master Plan Steering Committee and County Council before it's approved. But given the fact that one of the things we wanted to try to achieve through this outreach process was to get feedback on what a network would look like. And that's part of the reason why we're bringing these forward for information and for input at this current time. But we recognize that there does need to be some further refinement of the network in consultation, with, for example, with the lower tier municipalities to come up with the final plan if alternative 2 was the recommendation that goes forward and gets adopted. Excuse me. Next slide, please. So there are still a few things that we're working through, and this consultation process that we're going through right now is helping us to be able to provide some further answers with respect to these important issues. So one of the things that obviously we, if alternative 2 or even if alternative 1, the extent and configuration of the network is something that needs to be worked through further based on the input that we're receiving. One of the concerns that county staff especially have, as well as we've heard from other participants, is the state of the county's road shoulders. In some locations, they're not very substantive or they're not in very good condition. So there's concern about allowing them for use for ORVs without some sort of upgrade or improvement. There's also some concerns about how do you sign pavement mark and provide roadside protection for when you start to share the road explicitly with ORVs. So most of the signing that exists today on the roadside is aimed primarily at the vehicles on the traveled to paved portion of the roadway. So we'd have to come up with signing that enables the county to provide proper guidance to all road users while they're on the county road. Obviously, risk mitigation and insurance are important considerations for a municipality. So that's something that we're looking into in some greater detail, as well as restrictions and enforcement. So sort of balancing those two in terms of how that goes forward. And finally, and certainly not least important, is the financial implications to the county and its lower tier municipalities for allowing, if they are to allow off-road vehicle use. Next slide, please. So in closing, sort of where we're at today is we're just finishing off the council presentation. So we have one more to go this afternoon, and then that part of the process will be complete. As mentioned, we're in the process right now of doing public consultation that's going through to the early part of October. We're going to take the feedback that we received through these various processes and incorporate that into the strategy that we're going to bring back to County Council, with our expectation of bringing back our next report later this fall. So we're probably November, December. We're looking at sort of dates at this time. So with that, Mayor Clarkson, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions? Yes, Carol.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor, I guess this is a question for Jean or Peter. I think it would be helpful for me and others to just refresh ourselves in terms of what the Highway Traffic Act regulations are regarding off-road vehicles. For example, I know you have to have a license to drive. You have to wear a helmet. In our case, it has to be during daytime hours. You have to be going in the direction of traffic. And the one I'm really questioning is, I thought you had to drive on the shoulder of the road with an off-road vehicle. And that one is very important because of the condition of the shoulders that you pointed out. So could you clarify where off-road vehicles are allowed to drive on our roads? Is it just the shoulders? Where possible? I think it says where possible or something.
Through Mayor Clarkson to Councillor Armstrong. Yes, you are correct, where possible. Maybe I'll let Peter has a really good sort of explanation on this.
Thank you, Jean. Through the chair, that's correct. Within the regulation where there is a shoulder, ORV operators are to travel on that road shoulder, provided it's in a safe condition. So that requires some level of assessment of safety by the operator. Where there is no road shoulder, ORVs would be permitted to travel on the traveled surface of the roadway in the same direction of traffic. So that opportunity is there as well. Like for example, if you're crossing over a bridge or where there's guardrail that's obstructing the shoulder, you would have to travel on the traveled surface.
Just to follow up on that, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. As an example, I and others here live on the 507, which has 0 shoulders. And in the newer sections of road that have just been resurfaced have none or worse. So that I think is a larger issue than just this off-road vehicle decision that I'll throw out there as a generalized concern. You can't walk on it, you can't walk your dog, you certainly can't bike on the shoulder. So as part of the input to the Master Transportation Plan Committee, I think shoulders in general are a topic that needs some consideration.
Peter or Jean, do you want to speak to that?
I'm not really looking for an answer. I throw it out there for future consideration.
Yeah, I was just going to acknowledge the councillor's comment, and certainly is something that we're taking into consideration.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Lamb.
It seems that on your map there that it looks like almost all the county roads in Trent Lakes are going to be included in that, except for a little section over by Burley Falls. But as we do major reconstruction on all our roads, are we not going to be putting like active transportation lanes on the side of our roads? So that would kind of increase the road width considerably.
Through Mayor Clarkson to Councillor Lambshead. Fine points. I'll let Peter probably best to speak to these ones as well.
Thank you, Jean. Yeah, through the chair, within the scope of our capital construction program, where the county is doing road rehabilitation, simply pulverizing and overlaying the roadway. Our practice now is to pave the road shoulders to the full width of the available travel platform. Our reconstruction program is somewhat limited at this time. We're playing catch up on our rehabilitation projects rather than total reconstruction. When you're dealing with reconstruction, you're typically looking at 6 to 7 times the cost to reconstruct a roadway. There may be property acquisition to widen to accommodate a full road platform with proper shoulder widths of at least 1.5 meters. So it's a multi-year process to achieve that long-term objective, but we're committed to paving the shoulders, to providing active transportation facilities. So there will be a multitude of potential uses within those paved shoulders such as pedestrians, cyclists, and potentially ORVs. So.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. When these vehicles, it's clearly posted on the they are off-road vehicles, and they are allowed on county roads. Where is the liability when the vehicles themselves are said that they should not be on roads, that we turn around then and let them on roadways? I question the liability.
Maybe I'll start, Madam Mayor, and I'll turn it over to Peter if there's sort of any elaboration. So basically the Highway Traffic Act lays out the rules of engagement between different types of vehicles. The regulation specifies how, the specific regulation regarding off-road vehicles specify how those types of vehicles are intended to operate. And it's like sort of, it would be like any other vehicles that interact on a roadway. You know, the municipality is always going to be brought to the table because it's the owner of the infrastructure. But in those particular cases, it's going to be, the question is going to be, you know, who was obeying the law as it's laid out in the Highway Traffic Act or the municipality's bylaw in making that judgment. I do appreciate that, and again, that's sort of one of the concerns that we've identified. And you know, we're going to be reaching out again to the county's you know, risk management and insurance people to get an updated opinion on sort of the potential complications or impacts for the county as a result of if it were to allow ORV use by bylaw. But I don't know, Peter, if you wanted to add anything else to that.
Thanks, Jane. Through the chair, the county, we manage and maintain our roadways in accordance with particular design standards. The Ontario Traffic Manual, for example, for all of our road safety features such as signage, pavement markings. So we do have a measurable standard with which to manage our roadways, and in the event of an incident along the roadway, we refer back to those design standards and we're constantly reviewing them, updating, and ensuring that we're in compliance with those design standards. So that's our, I guess, our first line of defense with respect to potential claims. I'm sure Council is familiar with the matter of joint and several liability. That's always a potential issue as the county continues to manage our infrastructure.
Okay, did everybody understand that? I think it means you're darned if you do and darned if you don't. Okay, have we any further questions? And if not, can we have a motion to accept this report? Councillor Franson? Okay, and Councillor Lamshead, all in favor? And thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, now we have a delegation from Sean Morey, Executive Director of Peterborough Humane Society regarding an animal care center funding proposal. Please unmute your audio and or share your camera and make your presentation. You will have 10 minutes. And I will ask the council to hold all their questions till the end of the presentation.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council, staff, and community members that are on the call today. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today with regards to the Peterborough Humane Society seeking consideration and support through the 2022 budget process within the municipality of Trent Lakes to invest $50,000 into animal services through the new Peterborough Animal Care Center. Construction's underway currently. We're about 3 months into construction of our new 24,000 square foot facility that will house 3 new centers under one roof, which will include our animal care and education center, as well as a publicly accessible spay and neuter clinic, and as well the first of its kind in Canada provincial dog rehabilitation center that will be run by our friends at the Ontario SPCA and Humane Society. The reason for the build is twofold. One, we are currently based in a shelter that was built back in 1956. Was served originally to be just that of a pound service and not to really identified the care and components that are associated with stray animals or animals at large in the municipality. And as you could probably imagine, through the county, since 1956, just the overwhelming number of stray animals and number of animals that need care within our community has grown exponentially since that time over 65 years ago. As you know, throughout the last 18 months, but even prior to that, I mean, we're starting to see obviously staggering population growth, which obviously means and includes a staggering growth in pets within the area as well, which just brings in an even further increased demand for services, which this new building will be able to provide. The investment also invests in a safer community for the municipality through controlling pet overpopulation and overall pet health with the municipality, obviously through the spay-neuter services that we'll be able to provide within the new clinic, as well as rabies and microchip clinics that will be able to be held from time to time for community members and will be heavily subsidized for the residents within the municipality based on support provided into this project specifically, which basically means we're bringing affordable and accessible animal services to the community through this new center, which in these days is definitely welcomed without question and needed. We're also working closely to develop a trap, neuter, release program for feral or community cats to convert them into working cats. And obviously within the rural environment that we're in, having more opportunities to do that will just again increase the overall community safety within the municipality, assist those community members that are having issues with cat colonies or cats at large in general, but also any animal itself. But working on an opportunity to continue our work with that. As well, it's going to support a large economic benefit with increased jobs. We're looking at increasing our overall workflow and work power, and by doubling the number of workers within the center. But also in that, we're also looking at heavily recruiting professionals to the area, additional vets, additional registered vet techs that will come into this community and provide the support and services that are needed. If you're trying to get any type of vet visit or consultation these days, it's very, very difficult. We're seeing obviously in this industry high demand and it's not going away anytime soon. So we're looking at an opportunity to try and provide that relief and that support through this new center. As well, Madam Mayor, I will identify that it will be a great community hub for programs for both adults as well as children by providing programs geared towards education through humane education programming, understanding pet adoptions and understanding working and living with pets within your home. Future Vet program, Animal Smart, which is a curriculum that's provided by the Ontario SPCA and Humane Society that is rolling out into different curriculum within the schools and school boards, which will provide that opportunity for that human-animal bond and identifying the need for animals within our community. And lastly, I think one of the biggest things is that over the last 18 months or more, since we've been in this pandemic, we've identified the absolute need for animals and as a companion, as well as animals to provide us with mental health support. So having a location and a center that is geared directly for that, to provide that support to your family members, providing that support to your four-legged members of our community is huge, and it's needed now, and it's been long needed well before construction began 3 months ago. So my hope and focus is that the council will consider and support this through the 2022 budget process, and this investment really and surely is an opportunity for the municipality to support the four-legged members of our community as well as the owners within it for a better, more effective humane society that will aid in animal wellness within the community for generations to come. And for that, I want to say thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Okay, Council. Come on, animal lovers, where are you? Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. I had two questions in looking through your presentation. The first one, what is the total estimated cost of the project? If I extrapolate, it looks to me like it's around $10 million. Is that in the ballpark of what this entire project will cost?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Armstrong. That's correct. Yeah, it's just we're right at $10 million for the build. We've raised just over 80% of the funds to date, which is fantastic. The community's come together with regards to that. But we've been very fortunate that, you know, through the original budget process of this, which was back in early 2017, and going through some valued engineering, that we were able to keep that budget at $10 million for the build.
And the second question, again through you, Madam Mayor, what is your fundraising strategy? I mean, you're coming to us today for asking for $50,000. Are you appealing to other townships? If so, for how much? Are you going to the public? Are you looking for grants? You know, it sounds like you've raised 8 million. You've got 2 million to go. What is your fundraising strategy to get there?
Yeah, through you again, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Armstrong. Great question, and yes, and yes to all of those. we are seeking consideration and investment from all of the 8 municipalities within the county. All the same request is to provide those services for those committee members and for your municipality to support this project. We are looking into grant streams as well as individual fundraising. We are also consistently and constantly working with members within the provincial government and federal governments for aid and support in that as well to see this thing through to 100% completion. And we're dedicated and focused on that right till the end.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Windover.
Yes, sir. I just want, are you looking for grants and in different cities like Oshawa, all that, Bowmanville, so on, because they're going to take quite an advantage of this place too, you know?
Yes, and through you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Windover. Yes, absolutely. We're looking at grant opportunities and foundation support in all facets throughout the entire province, because this will truly be a provincial and honestly a federal initiative and center that will be able to provide those supports. Looking at, you know, specifically within foundations in Durham region, Northumberland region, the GTA, we'll be able to serve and support a catchment area from at least at minimum 2 hours of a 2 hours of a geographic radius to support this project, but also the services that we'll be able to provide within it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Lampsey?
Just what is the location of the building? I know it's kind of on the trail, but I'm not sure where.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Lamsad. Yeah, so the purchase of the property is at 1999 Technology Drive, so right at the end of the 115 and Highway 7. So about a 3-minute drive from our current location. We got just over 18.33 acres on site, building on just over 7.2 acres of it currently, and we'll be utilizing the additional acreage for minimally invasive trail systems, off-leash dog parks, and opportunities for community hubs throughout that as well.
Thank you.
I have a comment, Sean. Having been on county council for some time and sitting on different groups, and I'm always amazed that people come to us with something Peterborough. And I don't know why things are not named Peterborough and County or Peterborough and District, because to me, Peterborough by itself, without bringing county into it, is kind of a short-sighted way of appealing to the rural areas, because as soon as you say Peterborough, and we've gone through that with Fairhaven, gone through it with housing, but as soon as you just say Peterborough, people in rural areas tend to think of the services being available to Peterborough. Just a comment.
Thank you for that, Mayor. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, if there aren't any more comments, does anybody want to bring a motion forward here?
I have a comment.
Yes.
What is the ongoing operational costs of this new facility compared to the facility that you're in now, Sean?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Franzen, the overall operational model will increase by about 40% from our current operations. With that being said, our accessible spay neuter clinic will be will be self-sufficed, basically self-servicing and supporting overall operational processes. But we're looking at, and obviously the Ontario SPCA will be operating within the center as well. So they'll be taking on the 26.5% of the operational costs for the involvement of their center. So overall, from the Peterborough Humane Society themselves, we'll see an operational increase of about 40% altogether.
Okay, have we any more questions? If not, can we have a motion, please? Councillor Armstrong.
Motion to receive.
Thank you. And can we have a seconder?
Can we actually pass this around to some of our ratepayers to see if we can get some comments on this, some of our groups and things? I think that would be a good idea. This is a substantial amount of money, and I think if we had some comments from most of our cottagers associations and things, I think that would be a good idea. But I will second the receiving of it.
Okay, all in favor? The motion is carried. Okay, staff reports, Public Works, I don't see any. Recreation Facilities, I don't see any. Fire and Emergency Services, Building and Planning, Finance. And I believe you're starting a budget, correct?
Yes, so through you, yes, the department heads will have their budgets requests back to me by September 30th, and we'll be meeting as a group in October.
Yeah.
And our first meeting with council is November 15th.
So don't bother Donna anymore. Okay, administration, Lynn Holtz, Economic Development, Dock at Odenai Park. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of council. Speaking through you, Madam Mayor, you have before you a report regarding the proposed dock at Odenang Park in Buckhorn. Staff was directed by council to make an application to the Parks Canada Trent Severn Waterway regarding a proposed dock on March 16th, 2021. That application was prepared and submitted to Parks Canada Trent Severn Waterway on March 23rd, 2021. Trent Lakes received an approved permit for the proposed dock on September 13th, 2021. Additional information not available at that time of the report, but recently received upon further inquiry to Parks Canada staff, and to be included in the financial implications, is that an annual license of occupation would be required for the dock once the final as-built documents are submitted to Parks Canada. Excuse me, the fee amount would be dependent upon the use of the dock, and Parks Canada staff has estimated it to be around $200 per year based on the initial intention of the proposed dock. Today, I am asking council for direction as to how or if they would like to proceed going forward with this project. I am happy to try to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have, yes? Councillor.
Yeah, I just a comment. I think maybe this should be referred to the Economic Development Committee for a recommendation to council.
I think if I'm not mistaken that the Economic Development brought it forward in the first place. Is that not correct, Lynn?
Yes.
So it's
Speaking
already-
through you, Madam Mayor, yes.
I think situations have changed.
Pardon?
Situations have changed. We were talking at one time of having a boat that would compensate the municipality. I believe that's no longer an issue.
Well, from what I can gather, if the dock is built, there won't be any trouble getting a boat. But that's, you know, the system is busy.
If I may, Madam Mayor, Councillor Franzen is correct that it was originally proposed for a intended cruise boat. And at this time, that boat has moved on to another docking facility. We really don't know what the future would be. So the considerations for this dock would be either to go forward and to build it, and in the hopes that maybe another cruise operator would approach us, Or it could be maybe developed to be a public mooring space to be in addition to the Lock 31 Trent Severn Waterway mooring spaces. We have been told by Trent Severn Waterway that Lock 31 is one of the busier locks upon the canal system.
Yes, Councillor Lambsett.
Yeah, I think a dock in front of Udenang Park would be enhancement to the park. I mean, you have people going by there all the time with boats and might want to tie up and take a walk in the park. I mean, I think it's a small amount of money to make that even a better spot.
Well, and if you're down there after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can't find any place to park a boat. People are just shuffling out there trying to find a spot. And those people are coming in and using the restaurants and other facilities. Carol, did I see your hand?
Well, yes. Thank you, Madam. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Franson. I mean, at this point, we don't know what kind of a dock, how big a dock, or if a dock. Maybe it's a canoe dock and a kayak dock rather than a cruise boat sized dock.
Yeah.
And so I think further work has to be done to determine what the purpose of this would be if we want to still proceed. I think if I read this correctly, it sounds like that license or the application approval stands for a year. So we have to make a decision within a year. I'm hoping we could do it within a couple of months so that if we proceeded, we could have it in the budget for next year and start in March or whenever we have to. So a long way of saying, I think there's more work to be done, and I would agree with you, with Councillor Franson, that we defer this to the Economic Development Committee, who is working on all kinds of enhancements to that park area already.
But are they asking for something complete, or is this an endorsement in principle?
If I may, Madam Mayor, speaking through you, basically this is a approved permit from the Trent Severn Waterway. If we were going to repurpose the dock, but nothing about the dock was actually changing, it may be that we could move forward on it. And also the application doesn't actually come into force until we sign it and send it back to them. But it is from September the 13th to 2021 into September of 2022. If it was going to extend beyond that, then we would have to go back to Trent Severn Waterway and request an extension on the permit. So there is time for this to have this go back to the Economic Development Advisory Committee for them to provide some sort of recommendation or advice to council on.
Okay.
Clarifying question through you, Madam Mayor. So the permit approval, is that for a specific dock size, description, et cetera?
Yes. Yes. Speaking through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Armstrong, you are correct. If you look at the actual permit that was appended to the report, it actually shows the drawing as a 10 by 60 Duro dock. And then to attach it to the shoreline, it is a floating dock, I should point that out. There is some dock portion and also an anchoring to the shoreline itself. So that is what this application permit is based on, and that's what the approval is based on. So if you're going to change the use, I would have to go back to Trent Severn Waterway and ask them about that. If you're going to change what this dock looks like, that would probably nil and void this application, and a new application would have to be filed based on the new drawings and the new purpose. If it was, like, say it was resized to smaller to accommodate canoes or kayak users.
Yes, to my feeling, if it's built to the size it is now, it will accommodate pretty much anything that comes down. If we scale it down, then we have limited ourselves to getting a cruise or to getting something of a larger size in there. So the difference, once you get involved in that, the difference of costing it probably is not as big a deal as it is to do it undersized. And we've all been in the position where we built something to accommodate today, only to discover in 6 months or a year that if we had just made it a little bit bigger or gone with the original idea, then when something comes down that is more appealing, we can't say, well, you know what, we didn't do it big enough. Yes.
So thank you, Madam Mayor. One question, one comment. So what is the estimated cost for constructing a 10 by 60 dock as is included in our permit application?
Speaking through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Armstrong, I don't believe that we actually had a pricing in mind. I think it was looked at as being about $40,000,
Okay, thank you.
but we
And then-
didn't get direct quotes on that. But that's what
Thank
it was estimated to be around.
Okay, then I think this is a budget item. So I changed my mind on this then. I mean, we either have to approve or not approve proceeding with a 10 by 60 dock, given the permit approval. So I think that is a decision for council to make at this stage. And if we approve going ahead, then we still have to determine whether or not we have budget for it. So this would just be in principle.
Would anyone care to make that motion? Yes, Councillor Prince.
I have a concern. If we have an approximate cost of $40,000, with the cost increase of lumber and wages and everything else, we're probably looking at between $80,000 and $100,000.
Oh, I don't think it's going to quite that much.
Lumber is almost tripled in price since we initially talked about this.
But I think you're saying in principle, if this thing gets too far out of hand, then we rethink it.
Well, we estimated Galway Hall was going to cost us around $100,000. It ended up costing us over $160,000.
But
When
that's,
we did the residing.
but is that not the next step? You had a comment.
No.
Is anybody ready to make a motion?
Just one comment. Just
Yes.
one more comment. I think the idea in principle is something that I could support. So I think signing the permit and sending it back shouldn't really be an issue. And then we'll get some costing through the Economic Development Advisory Committee, can cost this whole thing and see what we will, because we can change the permit. I'm sure it's not a big issue with Trent Severn Waterways. If we downsize, it's not a big issue. If we want to go bigger, then it might be an issue. I think make sure that the permit is still valid. I think we sign it and send it back. And then we proceed through the Economic Development Committee. I think that is our route, just to see what would fit best there.
Is that okay with your motion?
And that's not really a motion, that's just an idea.
I would make the motion, but I would give staff the responsibility for getting the costing.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's going to come back to them anyway.
Yeah. So I guess let me try and make a motion here. So council received the report from the Economic Development Officer for information purposes. Further, that council approves signing back the permit issued by Trent Severn Waterway. And further, that this be an item included in the 2022 budget deliberations.
I will second that motion. Do we have a vote? All in favor? That has passed. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Done. And on that subject, it was mentioned before about getting some of those permanent fire pits for the far side of the canal. And Jeff Cheshire told me yesterday he's got them. So we need to communicate that back to the Trent. Okay, that's the dock. We've done that one. Manulife benefit renewal, Donna?
Yes, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So before you is the November 1st to October 31st Manulife employee benefit renewal. I can let you know that the cost for that period of time is $352,059 annually. That is an increase of $2,069 or 0.60%. They had initially, Manulife has been our carrier for quite some time. They had initially come in at a 13.6% request on the renewal. So Mosey & Mosey, who's our consultant that works on the benefits for us, went to market, put out 12 requests for proposals to potential insurers, and only 2 responded. So the Manulife is the one that is recommended by Mosey & Mosey and staff. The Desjardins bid was slightly lower, but the administration involved in the change would not be worth it, quite frankly. But it should also be noted, because this renewal is lower, that we will probably see increases in future years, because they, when they went to market, didn't want to lose the business essentially. So we could be looking at some increases in the future to make up for this reduction this year. That's happened before. So
This is a history lesson. Okay, can we have a motion to accept that report, please? Or if there's any questions? Councilor Franzen?
Motion to receive the report.
Okay, Councilor Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor?
Sorry,
Yes.
I think the motion as it's written is to receive the report, but also approve the benefit renewal.
Okay,
Is that
I'll
part of the
receive and
motion?
approve.
we stand corrected. Thank you.
I think we still need to call for the vote.
Oh, all right. Can we have the vote, please? All in favor? Motion is carried. Corporate Services, Ann Ruth. Council expenses, are you there, Ann?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson, to Council. This report brings forward Council expenses for the month of August and the remainder of expenses submitted for July for Council's consideration and approval. Thank you.
Okay, a motion, please. Councilor, Deputy Mayor Windover,
Yes,
Councilor
we do.
Franzen. This is a motion to approve. Carried. Okay, and the award for an environmental monitoring of waste disposal sites.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson, to Council. RFP-02-2021 for environmental monitoring of waste disposal sites was posted on August 11th and closed on September the 1st. 5 bids were received and were reviewed and evaluated by the Public Works Foreman Cavendish, Waste Management Public Works Coordinator, and Deputy Clerk. Staff are recommending that RFP-02-2021 be awarded to the highest scoring firm, being Cambium Inc. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a motion, please?
Yes, a question?
Yes. By
Sorry.
all means.
Sorry to keep doing that to you.
That's all right.
Through you, Madam Mayor. And what was the cost of this contract last year or last time earned? I'm just trying to understand what the comparison is year over year.
Through the mayor to Councillor Armstrong, the 2021 budget amount for this contract was $53,678. And that's for a single year. The financial implications identified in the report are the amount for a 2-year term.
Okay, so minimal increase, about $11,000. Thank you.
Okay. Are you happy to make a motion now?
I would be happy to make the motion that we receive the report.
Councilor Lamson, did you have your hand up before?
No, that was just for a motion.
Okay, so we've got a first and a second, all in favor. Motion is carried. Okay, purchasing policy review. Again, Ann, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson, to Council. A comprehensive review of the municipality's purchasing policy has been undertaken to ensure legislative compliance, apply procurement best practices, and support operational requirements. The report includes a high-level summary of policy changes, and a bylaw to adopt the updated purchasing policy is included on today's agenda for Council's consideration. Thank you.
Okay, do we have comments on this one? And if not, can we have a motion? Councilor Armstrong.
Comment?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm learning, you see.
You're going to stop looking in this direction.
No, I'm not.
I would blame you. So on the policy, I had a concern, and this is at the end of our agenda, the approval grid, purchasing approval and authority table on page 27 of policy, greater than 100,000 goes to the department head and CAO, but there's no upper limit. And I find that odd and would prefer to have something between greater than 100,000, but less than 2 million or less than a million or whatever. But the fact that there's no upper limit makes me very nervous from a control perspective. Donna, you're the treasury finance guru, so I'll kind of look at you to say, is there something I'm missing?
So through you, I'm not aware, we could go back and have a look at that if you wish. I believe that this was developed based on a lot of, and we actually ran this by our auditors and our solicitor as well, based on other policies that are similar, but we can go back and have a look at that for sure.
I would like to suggest if others agree that we do, because leaving it open-ended makes me very uncomfortable from a fiduciary control perspective. I mean, basically, you could sign a $12 million contract, which you're not going to do, but sorry, Jesse, am I missing something?
Through, I just might help to clarify that none of these, that all of these items that would be approved by the department head and the CAO would be included in the budget. So council would have had approval for these items to go forward. It would just be the authority to award the RFP or the tender and to sign the contract. Anything that was out of budget or not included in the budget would have to come to council for approval.
That helps, but my suggestion I think still stands.
Okay, so do we have a seconder to Carol's request? Councilor Franzen?
I'll second it.
Okay.
If I can just clarify,
Yeah.
Councilor Armstrong, that you're just requesting that this report be deferred in order to address the concern with the upper limit with the authority to award?
Well said, yes, exactly.
I
Thank
thought
you.
I wrote it down right.
Okay, all in favor? Motion carried. Correspondence for information. Does anybody want to pull any of these out? Support resolution regarding phase out of Ontario gas plants. I would like to pull that one out because until we come up with something that's, there was a big deal not very long ago to pull out the pull out coal, and that's been done. And until we get other means, it's not feasible to pull out gas plants at this time. So I would pull that one out. And did anybody else like to pull anything else out? Yes.
Through you, these are just for information. So council has already received this and not supported
Okay,
it in the past.
so then we don't have to do anything with any of these?
Correct, they're just for council's information.
Okay,
I would still like a resolution to receive them all, if I could.
all right.
A motion to receive all of the correspondence.
Okay, Councillor Franzen, Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor? Carried. Correspondence for action, none. We need a bylaw for the waste disposal site agreement. Councillor Armstrong?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Seconder, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor? Motion is carried. Purchasing policy. That's the one we've deferred. Okay, so we don't need to deal with that one now.
I could just have a motion to defer that one as well.
Okay, can we have a motion to defer this one? Deputy Mayor Windover, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor? Zoning bylaw amendment for file for Convery 2106. Motion, please. Councillor Lambshead.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? Carried. Business arising out of a previous meeting. I'm going to just make a bit of a little bit of a comment here. There's been an awful lot of flack concerning my involvement with quarries or not. And on a point of clarification, my career has been spent making sure that the municipality gets the best protection that it can possibly get. It makes no difference whether I'm in favor or not in favor of a quarry, because the provincial policy statement lays out the rules and regulations for dealing with quarries. So I take umbrage at being accused of some of these things. I have petitioned at every opportunity that we've had at conventions to try to get more money per ton and to get the buffer zones around quarries maintained by the quarry, not the private developers. But as far as peer reviews are concerned, peer reviews are absolutely necessary. But once we've got them and we've got them all in, we've got to be very careful that we are not considered to be holding up the process, because we can very easily get ourselves into difficulty if we inadvertently make things more difficult than what they have to be. So are we going to follow the letter of the law, get the best that we can get the best transfer that we can get out of this? Absolutely. But we cannot buckle to a pressure group who want us to do something that is not in the best interest of all of us. Thank you. Now, Jack, or John Jackson, is celebrating his 100th birthday on October the 3rd. We all wish him many happy returns, and there will be a birthday celebration at the Cavendish Hall on October the 2nd. For anyone who would like to drop in with well wishes, no presents have been requested. Please call the Cavendish Hall at 705-657-1192 for more information. Jack and Jack Clark are two of the founding fathers, you might say, of the Cavendish Community Center and the Cavendish community. With the passing of Jack Clark, Jack and his wife are now the flag bearers. The two of them have they worked their hearts out, and as many as possible need to be there to wish the two of them a happy, happy birthday. Now, have we any business for rising out after I've said my piece? Anybody? Nobody's got earth-shattering information? Okay, now we're going to deal with a couple of notices of motion, and I'm going to ask Deputy Mayor Windover to introduce his notice of motion. The only discussion on this motion at this point is if we're going to reconsider the motion. So if it's going to be reconsidered, it has to have a motion before we then reconsider it. So right now we're looking for reconsideration. Councillor.
I'll make the motion to ask for reconsideration.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that motion? You're going to second it?
I'll second that because we
Okay, all in
not as
favor?
it's written, but I will second it to have discussion.
Okay, all in favor?
I'd like to make a comment before we do.
Sure.
My comment is as follows. I think a motion to reconsider is a very extraordinary motion. We've not had one of these throughout our term. It's rarely used. In my opinion, it should only be approved if there is new information or there's been a material change in the circumstances of the underlying issue that would cause us to reconsider the motion, not because somebody didn't like the outcome of a previous vote. So in this case, I think we're talking about compensation in this first one. Right. I don't believe there are any new facts. I don't believe there's been any change from a month ago. And I personally think it's very dangerous to start setting a precedent of reconsidering decisions that have been made appropriately by council. So I certainly will be opposed to this.
Councillor Lamstead.
Yeah, and I think part of this is going to be done through the County of Peterborough. So my thought on this would be that our staff share information with the County of Peterborough during their process of checking all the remunerations of all the.
Objection, I think you're talking about the motion.
Oh, yes.
Compensation,
My
not the
apologies. Yes,
motion
my
to
apologies.
reconsider.
Yeah, that's for future. Good.
Sorry, Terry.
No, good point.
I think, to me, the modus of the new information, if you want to have some new information, is the fact that we now have a full council. And that's what's new. Councillor Lamstead.
I made my point. Inadvertently.
Yes.
I agree with Councillor Armstrong. I'd like to wait the 6 months before we relook at this motion. We shouldn't be relooking at motions just because we don't like the outcome.
So right now, the request then is for a notice of reconsideration. I'm going to call for the vote.
Request for a,
Recorded vote?
thank you, that's the word.
See, I looked at you. It's easier
Word
when you're on
escaped me.
this little screen, you see, and your hand goes up.
If we're ready for the vote, then I will ask Councillor Armstrong if she's in favor.
No.
Mayor Clarkson,
Yes.
Councillor Franzen,
No.
Councillor Lambshead,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Windover,
Yes.
motion has carried.
Okay, now we are looking at reconsidering the original motion.
So I'm going to make the motion then to reconsider council's remuneration. The council reconsider a motion regarding the council remuneration identified. Okay. Whereas Trent Lake Council remuneration is below the threshold for attracting good candidates for council position. And whereas council has gone backwards in the last few years by removing the per diem for additional council meetings and the 1/3 income tax exemption. And whereas people who are still working and therefore in touch with municipal operations cannot afford to work for these wages. Therefore, the council directs staff to hold a public meeting to consider an increase in Trent Lake Council enumeration, and further, that copy of this resolution be sent to Peterborough County Council for their information.
Thank you. Discussion, please. Yes,
Sorry, if I may, can I just get a seconder for that before discussion?
okay, I will second that. Okay,
I have 2 points. Have we had problems attracting good candidates in the past?
yes.
I think that's an opinion. I think that's an opinion.
Everything that you do, Peter, is an opinion.
Okay, and then I have a comment. It's the last whereas people that are still working and therefore in touch with municipal operations can not afford to work for these wages. Do we want to restrict members of council that they only are able to run if they work within the municipality? If you work in Toronto or Oshawa or Peterborough, how are you in contact with municipal operations?
If I can comment to that, I don't think that the motion is trying to restrict people. I think it's trying to open up the opportunities. We've got a couple people on this council now who are putting a tremendous amount of their own time into attending council. I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that we get a huge, big raise out of this. But we've got to somewhat keep up with the times. Because people who are retired, you can always find people out there who want to run for one reason or another. But the average person who's been retired for a time tends to become centered on their futures, on their ability to make sure that the taxes don't go up so that they're not handicapped. And we need that group of people, but we also need the people who are working, who do know the trials and tribulations that it takes to operate a business in this day and age. Because that's getting harder and harder and harder. And we don't want to take people like Terry Lambshead and say, you know what? This is really too, and I'm not singling you out, Terry, I'm using you as an example. When I sit around county council and I look at the ages of the people who are there, and I look at the decision making, I question the change in people's attitudes as they get older. We don't want to lose that group, but we've got to make sure that we bring the young blood the young blood in. And we've got to have the people who work, because those people are in touch with every single thing that we do every day. So I think the reason, and I'm not looking at, say, doubling salaries or doing anything else, but I think if we could get back to where we were 5 or 6 years ago, and this is not self-serving for me because everybody around this table knows I'm done. But I don't want to see us to the point that people say, you know what, I'd love to do it, but I can't afford it. Because we want the people who love to do it. Yes, Peter, that's my soapbox.
Okay, I'll just make a couple comments. We look around this council chambers and at least 3 of us are working part-time. So we do have working people on council.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly my point.
But we have them on council now. It's like you're saying it's a problem. And we have it now, and it's not a problem. First of all, you need to have a flexible job where you can go to a meeting in Buckhorn at 8:30 in the morning and not have to work and not have to be on a job site. So I don't know how possibly a person that's working from 9 till 5 could possibly be a counselor, because first of all, you've got external meetings that don't go by, aren't regulated by this council. We have Kawartha Conservation. You have county council. We have other external meeting. I don't know how that would work. And I think this statement, this should be taken out of the resolution.
Which statement?
Whereas we are still, whereas people who are still working and therefore in touch with municipal operations cannot afford to work at these wages. I think that should be removed. It's like council's endorsing a certain sector that should think of running for municipal council. I think anybody that's a Canadian citizen and a ratepayer in this municipality should be encouraged to run for council.
If you were 20 years younger and you needed to go out every morning and make your money as a bricklayer or a stone layer, could you have done it?
I wasn't 40 when I got first elected to council.
Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. A different perspective. I agree with the need to look at our compensation. Totally. I don't know why we need a resolution at all, since the county has already hired a consultant to look at the duties, responsibilities, and compensation of councillors across the 8 municipalities and county council. And we previously approved a motion to help fund that study. So in my view, they are already doing the work that we need to be done in order to take a good professional look at compensation for councillors. So in my mind, it's being done. Part of that study, if I recall, was to interview various councillors to understand how much time they put in, et cetera. So as far as I'm concerned, it's already being done, and it should be done at the county level across all municipalities, because you can't look at one municipality in isolation. So I don't see the purpose of doing this one again. We already passed a motion a couple meetings ago to support the county study. So I think this is completely redundant and unnecessary.
I don't think so, because sitting at the county table, when they've got an endorsement by one of the townships, it tends to give the other one some life. So I don't think it's, it's not going to change anything as far as the county is concerned. We're looking, when we first decided to become mayor instead of Reeve, everybody said, oh, you can't do that. Everybody in the county has to do the same thing. Well, we don't all have to do the same thing. We understand what our needs are. We understand what our pressures are. We can support what the county's doing, but we can also act independently. That's our job. We have set our wages 2 or 3 times since I've been involved in council. Never once did we go to the county and ask their permission. We decided amongst ourselves that the remuneration was low. I don't know who, I guess the provincial government decided to take away our third. And at that time, that's when we should have gone out and said, okay, now is the time to look at trying to recover some of this. But I don't think us operating independently is taking anything away from the county. I think it simply gives the county a little bit of a thought process as to say, you know what? These people have put their money where their mouth is.
Then if I may suggest, we wait until the results of the county study are in, because we're not bound by what they do, and then use that information if we choose to at that point. But I don't think there's a role for us to play until that study has been completed and we've all been interviewed and provided input to it. So let that play out, and then we can take this up if there's a need to. I just don't know why we would be doing it in concert at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that is a reasonable route to take, because we are going to spend staff time to do the same work that the county's going to do. I would really like our staff to communicate with county staff about our, we have some geographical restraints here that are unique to us. We don't have a grid system for our roads. We have nice roads, but they're just not a grid system. You have to drive around the entire middle of our municipality to get somewhere. Like if you start from Burley Falls and go to Galway or Kinmount, you drove a considerable amount of road to get there. So I think that once the county has done their study and we have some input in that, and hopefully we do all get interviewed, then I think we should do our own quick analysis of that through staff.
I would concur with that, as long as the county has a time element that's going to get this back before the next election. Yes.
So thank you, through you. Just to clarify, I have had a couple of conversations with the group that is doing the review. We're very much involved in it. I had a list given to me yesterday of all the comparable municipalities. So it's not something the county is doing independently. We are involved. We're part of the tender. That's the council approval that we did obtain, and we will be part of that review.
Yes, to the mayor's point, is there a time frame for that?
Yes, so through you, the promise is to have it by the end of the year. So late fall, for sure by the end of the year.
Okay. So are we going to, does somebody want to put a motion through then to, okay, we've got this on discussion. So at this point, I'm going to say, I'm going to call for a vote as to whether or not we're going to accept Councillor or Deputy Mayor Windover's resolution or notice of motion. And are you going to want a recorded vote? Because the motion's on the floor.
Yes.
So we're dealing with.
We do have to vote for it. So yes.
Yes.
Let's have a recorded vote on that.
Okay.
Councillor Armstrong, are you in favor?
No.
Mayor Clarkson?
Yes.
Councillor Franson?
No.
Councillor Lambshead?
Not as it's written, no.
Deputy Mayor Windover?
No, I think so. If we go to redo that, yeah.
Okay, so that motion has lost. Okay, now if we can deal with the second one, please. And Deputy Mayor Windover, would you like to introduce your second motion?
I would, but I would like at this time, do not ask council for reconsideration of it. Because a motion regarding the fireworks ban. Our municipality has bylaws. I'll be honest with you, I've had so many calls and emails the last while about fireworks. It's unbelievable. And I'm starting to wonder what's going on, because I know we have bylaws now. They only allow fireworks 4 times a year, I believe. And nothing's being done about it. I mean, you think Jimmy Shearer called me and said, holy geez, Ron, we're having an awful time here. Like, why aren't why is the municipality itself not some way, I don't know, like getting the OPPs or somebody to stop this? Because I mean, it's continuing every night. It's not as if it just happens the odd time. Like like sunrise, sunset, it's all there all the time. They're like Jimmy's Cheers people that cross the lake. It's unbelievable the amount of fireworks that go off. But we have bylaws now that say you can't do it, but nothing's being done. This is why it's so frustrating. Is it go to Helpany to make another bylaw that says you can't have any? I just almost find that it's not necessary or it wouldn't be beneficial to do this now when you get thinking of how you do it and the amount of people that's called.
So then maybe go ahead.
I just want to be clear that you are withdrawing your notice of motion
Yeah.
to reconsider the fireworks ban. Okay.
Yeah, well, yes.
So maybe we can request staff to bring some information to us in terms of how we establish, well, the bylaw is established, but how do we implement that bylaw?
Right, yeah.
Because I think your point is there's no point in putting a bylaw if we have if the bylaws have no teeth.
That's right.
So right now, we're behind the ball in terms of bylaws in a lot of areas.
I'd like to add to that, Madam Mayor. I think what we need is an update on the numbers of calls that are going into our after-hours call center, as well as bylaw complaints that are made directly to Court the Guard. I have that through May. I can tell you that in 8 months last year, there were 3 registered complaints for fireworks. And up through May, there were 0. So if I look at the data, the problem is not enforcement. The problem is people not registering complaints. They're whining, they're moaning, they're complaining, they're emailing you, they're calling everybody, but they're not registering a complaint that can be dealt with by either Court the Guard or someone else. We also looked through May to see, well, is it going to the OPP instead? Because it's just easier to call the OPP. And we sat with the Chris Galisa, I think his last name is, and we looked at the timeframes of complaints for things like noise, et cetera, and there was no substantial difference between daytime calls and nighttime or weekend calls. So it suggested to me that they weren't just calling the OPP out of habit. So I think the message we need to give our taxpayers is if they have an issue for which we have a bylaw, you have to call and register the complaint or we can't act on it. So that's my soapbox speech.
And be clear as to what those numbers are.
But we should get an update on that. In fact, we said that one of the things we would do is look at the volumes of complaints coming in through our after hours so that we could determine the next steps as to whether we needed a bylaw enforcement officer during those times. The data through May would suggest no. Would you put somebody in place for 3 complaints over 5 months?
Live on my
I
dock.
don't think so.
Live on my dock.
I know.
I'll give you some complaints.
We all complain, but unless you forward it to somebody who can do something about it.
So our website must be clear in terms of who you call and what the number is.
Yep. Well, I think that little brochure that Derek and whoever John put together last year is very clear. I think it's our job to reinforce to our taxpayers that understand you got a problem. I get it. I don't like it either. Fireworks going off all the time. I can't do anything about it. You have to call Court the Guard or call Derek or call Tess.
Yes.
Through you, I think it's important that any staff members or council, if you get a complaint, then get the people to phone in a complaint.
Yeah.
Like make sure it gets to the municipality, so it gets recorded, it gets looked, there will be some form of paper trail that we can enforce later. Like we may have to be proactive on enforcement. I mean, we just need to have some data to follow that up with. So it's important.
But nobody wants to file a complaint and put their name to it, complaining about a neighbor.
Well, too bad. How else are you going to deal with it?
If you have 3 complaints, you've got more than 30 people that are concerned about it because, you can multiply it at least 10 times or even more than that. That's the problem. And I mean, they contact a counselor a week or two after the incident.
Okay, well, we've withdrawn that one, so we don't have anything to do here, right? We're done there. So do we have any new notices of motion that are going to come through today? And if not, information items, liaison reports for external boards. Anybody, any board that they want to speak to, a committee that they've attended? Any other information items? Closed session? Business arising from a closed session? Adoption of a confirming bylaw. I need a motion to confirm the bylaw. Councillor Lambshead and Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor? Motion is carried. Adjournment.
No.
Deputy Mayor Windover. Councillor Lambshead, all in favor? Good night, everybody.